Let's start with higher education. So, there's been a federal investigation into Harvard University. As you know, also, there had been a battle between Harvard University and Trump to comply with the new guidelines when it comes to DEI. So, of course, there's an investigation that has went into Harvard to find out that they had violated what's called the Civil Rights Act. What I'm going to cover today is a little bit information about Harvard, a little bit about its history, and to see what law specifically did Harvard supposedly had violated. As a matter of fact, the federal investigation has came and said that they have violated. Do you guys remember Legally Blonde? You guys remember that movie? You remember the plot of the movie? Let me read off to you the plot, right? It's going to tie in to what I'm going to be talking about today, okay? So Elle Woods, she is a stylish, loving sorority queen right over there at UCLA. When her boyfriend Warner dumps her and decides to attend Harvard University and become a law student, Elle follows him to Harvard to win him back. Along the way, she discovers her own strengths, intelligence, and passion for law. Instead of chasing love, she becomes a top student and she wins a major court case, proving that she is not just a pretty face. It's been a book, play, stage, musical, and movie. And do many of you remember Legally Blonde? Well, let's talk about Legally Blonde and let's talk about how it ties in to today's discrimination. Because, of course, if you remember Legally Blonde, you remember just how much little Elle Woods, petite, blonde, and considered dumb, was discriminated against at Harvard. So let's tie all this in today, okay, guys? So join me. And right after this, we're going to tie in how Harvard discrimination case with the legalities of what is going on today and what the investigation has found, how I was discriminated against while I was attending college, and how all of this ties into what we call the Civil Rights Act of today. Stay with me, all of that and more.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top.
Yo, no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving boulders. Now we ain't getting posterized, we out here making posters. And we ain't got nothing to hide, we move forward like soldiers.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top, yeah. You know I'm always
Hi there, I'm Abby Kay. Welcome to the Creative Leadership Network, known as TCLN, where education is the specialty and solutions are the art. I brought this broadcast together so that we can rise above social, systemic, and spiritual issues that we face every day in our nation. The goal is to help us to do better, get better, and become better. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, make sure that your phone notifications are turned on so that you will not forget to be inspired and to stay informed. So with that being said, let's jump right in. Professor Callahan. So that was Elle's Harvard law professor, who was the defense attorney for Brooke. Elle Woods, she was initially the intern. Later, she turned to be the lead that was in the court. Emmett Richmond, Calhoun's junior associate and Elle's ally. And then the prosecutor, which is the district attorney, opposing side in the court. She doesn't necessarily have a name, but of course, she is the one who fights against Harvard. Brooke. And now, she Brooke was accused of what? Murder. She was accused of murdering her wealthy husband. So she was a successful fitness entrepreneur, former Delta Nu sorority student. And let me retract. She wasn't a student. She was a former student. So again, she claims that she's innocent and she was getting liposuction at the time, which was a secret she refused to reveal. And she was fearing that it would damage her fitness image, right? So that's why a lot of information wasn't coming out and she was looking all guilty, right? So if you know anything about Elle was discriminated against because she wasn't your typical young lady, how she fit in image, how she fit the Harvard so-called vernacular of smart, intelligent, and here she comes. She's bouncy, she's blonde, she has a dog, she considered dumb. Her boyfriend even dumps her Warner because he doesn't consider her to be smart enough, and he considers that she's going to taint his image, and he doesn't want to carry that, so he goes find a new girlfriend. And so all of that kind of ties into discrimination, right? And so then you would say, well, what does that have to do with what the legal investigation found for today at Harvard against Jews and discrimination? Well, as you know, the Civil Rights Act lays out discrimination, right? So no matter how you feel about movies or entertainment, or I guess you could say today's news or commentary, it kind of all ties in, don't it? At the end of the day, discrimination is discrimination. And according to the law, it lets you know what discrimination is. So when we go by the Civil Rights Act, let's look into what discrimination is, and then we can see how the legal investigation came up with how Harvard supposedly had discriminated against the Jews, or what's considered Jewish students. So the law actually involves Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And this is what the law states: no person in the United States shall, on the ground of race, color, national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied of the benefits of, or subjected to discrimination under any program, activity receiving federal assistance. And that is the law. Applies to schools, universities, hospitals, government agencies that receive federal funding. It also enforced by the U.S. Department of Education, Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, and the Department of Justice. Now, we all know Little Rich Elle was not receiving federal funds. We know that, but she was discriminated against. And it says upon race, color, national origin, or your background and where you come from, right? So, of course, that's exactly how she was discriminated against: how her background is, where she comes from, and she was labeled and deemed unintelligent, right? So, people will basically judge you whether you're rich or poor, or whether they consider you to be unintelligent, how you talk, how you act, your background, your origin, your education, where you come from, right? All of that is considered to be discrimination. Now, what I want to do is I want to tie that in. So the reason why I brought up Elle is because years ago I was in college. So I was in a performing arts school, and this particular performing arts school is known as KD College of Dallas. So it's KD College Film and Conservatory Film School, right? I also attended the University of North Texas. So these are schools I was attending, one for journalism and one for performing arts. And what ended up happening is that people was beginning to notice my talent for performing arts and for acting. And I submitted for a play known as Legally Blonde. This play was being held in downtown Garland, which is the major theater they had just kind of redone and refurbished. It was opening up, and it was beginning to bring broader appeal there because, again, it's a pretty much a mid-sized, I would say, theater, but it is also nationally known, so people do come and visit. People do travel to come to theater there, right? So I went to I was getting ready to get on the bus, and I had to also ride a train, right? So I'm coming from my school, I'm going to the audition, and all of a sudden two officers jump out, and the two officers, they bust out and say, "You need to sit down. You cannot be successful. It's not for you." I thought that was so strange. I never in my life, ever in my life, ever heard officers talking like that. And I've talked about this before on previous, I'm sorry, previous broadcasts that I've held, but that was shocking to me. I never in my life heard officers. I know about targeting. We all know about targeting. And usually when officers target you, that is the very reason they're targeting you. They don't say that that's why they're targeting you, though. It's usually they stopping you for a stoplight, or it's something else, mask, or it's some type of setup or something, or something like that. It's not them straight out coming and saying that this is what they're doing. And so when they did that, downtown was full, everything was rolling, and I'm looking around like, I know everybody heard that. Like, it's right in the middle of downtown, right? Nobody says anything. Everybody's just sitting there, right? Nobody says a word. And I thought to myself, wow. And so at first I just thought something was wrong with the trains. A lot of times something happens with the trains all the time and they have to go out and repair them. And so when I found out that that wasn't it and that this was a literal, verbal attack, so then I politely said to the office, I said, well, I'm going to get on the train anyway. I haven't broken the law and I'm going to get on it anyway. That's exactly what I do. There are some more things that happen with the attack and some things, but that's not what I'm here to discuss. But I just want to show you just how discrimination is so broad and how it's played out in many different ways. The law is the civil rights law. The civil rights law is not just broken on levels of or capacities of just education. It's broken in the system, period, and it manifests itself in many different ways, right? And so I'm tying that in because that is the actual play that I was getting cast for. Now, I knew somewhat about the play, but I didn't know deeply into the play, right? They only give you so many details and you kind of do your little research, but you don't know the full play until you start going to rehearsals. You get the breakdowns, you get the sites and all that kind of stuff, and you get to find out more detail. And basically, Elle was just discriminated against. No, she wasn't in federal programming or anything like that. And no, she didn't come from the wrong side of the tracks, as they say. As a matter of fact, she was a rich cat, her and her family. But it just goes to show you it doesn't matter. Discrimination is discrimination, and people will find a way to exclude you. Now, let's jump into the violations of what was going on at Harvard and why they chose to investigate. So, again, let's recap. This violation is a person being treated differently, being denied equal access based on race, color, or national origin. The discrimination happens with a federally funded program. The institution they knew about the issue, or they either participated indirectly or was deliberately indifferent toward an issue. So basically, this is how they consider this to be a violation when it comes to Harvard. A federal task force led by the U.S. Department of Human and Health Services Office for Civil Rights, which is known as OCR, along with the Justice and Education Departments, has officially concluded that Harvard University violated Title VI of Civil Rights Act of 1964 by engaging in deliberate indifference and in some cases willful participation towards the harassment of Jewish and Israeli students. Now, I know that there are debates all over the internet. People have their varying opinions, right? So some people feel that because of the way that they feel that at least the information that they were getting all over the platforms about the way that Israelis were bombing, Iran or bombing Pakistan, what is that, Palestine and all that kind of stuff. So it made people feel a certain kind of way. It made people feel that they were doing an injustice. So of course, if people are fed information, they're going to feel like, okay, you guys are in the wrong, right? And so maybe that was a little bit of influence of how people were acting. Um, what I tried to do is I was looking into some information because I said, well, before all of this started popping off, were there previous cases where Harvard was discriminating against Jewish students, right? Had there been previous foundings, right? I didn't particularly come up with anything, right? And I knew I had to stay on track and I had limited time. So I just wanted to bring you this information, but I did wanted to make that known that because of the war that's going on and because of the information that's being fed in the media, sometimes that can be an influence when it comes to other students. I'm not sure about staff, but when it comes to other students, because like they said, they found that they were acting deliberately indifferent. So, of course, I don't believe the staff is just going to be out there, discriminating. But of course, when the students are having injustices toward each other, maybe according to the investigation, that they felt that Harvard was not protecting the Jewish and Israeli students. So the report documents a pattern of harassing speech, threats, intimidation, vandalism, and physical violence targeting Jewish and Israeli students on campus between October 7th, 2023, and now. Okay? It accuses Harvard of failing to enact consistent reporting, disciplinary policies, or enforcement, leaving Jewish students without protection or access to campus facilities. OCR emphasizes that Harvard received over 794 million in HHS funding alone during the fiscal year of 2023 through 2025, meaning that it's legally bound to Title 6, right? Now, guys, you know a lot of these civil rights acts was originally for us, right? But there have been other people who have came to be able to benefit. That's why immigration is going on. That's why all these different things going on, and they've been able to benefit off of these laws, right? So that's another factor that's at play. It's not just, oh, the war that's going on or all of these things going on. Um, I think it's important to find out, how Black students, especially when the Civil Rights Act was originally for them in the first place, how Black students have been treated, at Harvard. You guys may want to look into that, right? And the reason why I say that, because this really didn't start coming up until the battle between Harvard and DEI and I'm sorry, Trump. So you have to understand sometimes things don't come to the surface until let's just say you and Sam get into it, right? And let's just say some things were going on that Sam was doing, right? And so you come against Sam and say, I need for you to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And Sam says, no, no, no. And then all of a sudden you say, okay, well, you're going to get exposed because this is what you have been doing, and that's what I feel with this. I'm not going to lie. This is just my commentary. I literally feel that if there was some type of discrimination going on, it had been going on. But because Trump said, you guys don't want to heed to the DEI, because remember, Harvard came back and said, we're going to file against you, Trump. We feel that you're doing wrong with the DEI, and we feel that we should be able to stand in our schools and we should be able to, fight for DEI and fight for equality. And so then it's almost like playing checkers and chess, right? So then the Trump administration, or at least the federal government, comes back and say, you're not so innocent yourself. And this is what we found on you. We found on you with Jewish students, right? So sometimes, guys, sometimes things, I said all of that to say that sometimes things don't come to the forefront, or battles don't get fought, or injustices don't have a light shined upon them until people fight for selfish means or whatever the reasons may be. And then it brings out the total thing of what's been going on all sides, whether it's Trump, whether it's Harvard, whether it's students, you understand what I'm saying? Whether there was discrimination that hadn't been brought to the fourth light, but now it's brought to the fourth light because of the battle between Trump and Harvard. So sometimes things don't get exposed until broader things get exposed, right? So I'm going to leave that for you guys to discuss. I just wanted to bring that to you. And just to tie in, like even my own experience of being in college and someone telling me that you can't be successful. What do you mean I can't be successful? And what would even make a police officer say that, right? Because police officers, I did an episode on this last week, guys. Go back and look at it. What if they look like us? You understand what I'm saying? And I did an episode on this and I broke down why police officers were originally put into place in the first place. And there were two reasons of why they were put into place. First, it had to do with the control of immigrants and protests and all that kind of stuff. And the second one had to do with slavery and making sure that slaves stay in their place and they didn't, run away and different things didn't go on. So police were originally put into place for certain monitoring aspects, right? So when you look at today, are those things still at operation? Yes, but there have been some dynamics that have changed. You might want to check out that video. That video has hit pretty much a lot of views, over 1K something views. And so you might want to check it out and add, again, like I said, this is a commentary channel. I do bring the facts, but I bring like our way of how we think and how we feel about things too, right? Because again, like I said, it's important how we think and how we feel. And it's important that we add to the conversation, right? So next, moving on to the next story. So again, I want to share with you before I leave, what was Harvard actually found guilty of? Verbal and written harassment targeting Jewish and Israeli students, anti-Semitic slurs and threats, physical intimidation, including students being blocked from entering or exiting buildings, vandalism of Jewish student spaces or symbols like Stars of David being being defaced, faculty and staff failure to respond effectively or consistently to students' complaints, delays or inconsistencies in applying university discipline policies. So that's what the federal investigation was able to tap into and find. And have you ever heard of a thing called guilty by association or failing to protect and protect as an institution? So basically, that's what's being said, right? So it's not like Harvard themselves was actually doing it, but it was being done. I guess you can say, I don't know if with other students or lower faculty, and then Harvard itself was not protecting because remember they get federal funding. And so remember, Trump was saying, I'm gonna cut your federal funding if you guys do not go by DEI and back down, because we're not going to use DEI in these schools like that anymore. And Harvard was saying, no, 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 we should be able to use DEI. And that was the argument. So the administration came against Harvard, and then Harvard came against Trump administration or Trump and what he was proposing. And then that's when the investigation happened. And that's when they found this discrimination against Harvard. Again, I don't even really know if it would have been mainly even broadcasted like that had there had not been this big battle between Harvard and Trump. You understand that? So again, do we really know the real story? I would say no. We can only go by what the media is giving us, what the facts of the investigation is giving us, what Trump has had to say, and what Harvard has had to say. Again, if we're not there, we're not experiencing, we're just going by what they all are saying. And I'm going to leave you with Harvard's response. Harvard strongly disputes the findings, asserting that it has taken substantive protective steps, reforming disciplinary processes, enhancing anti-bias training, and establishing oversight mechanisms. It's according to Reuters.com. The university maintains its non-indifferent, prioritizing the safety and well-being of its Jewish and Israeli students. So I just wanted to leave that with you because, again, a lot of things that we go through, they don't necessarily come out until the fire is on. And then when the fire is on, you get to see all different sides. Who's fighting for what, whose rights are being violated, or who they say rights are being violated, uh, who's politicking over power, who gets control over that power. Like all of these things come out in the fire, right? So guys, I hope you gained something from that. Go ahead and give your insights and your inputs. Tell me how you feel. I don't know if you're a Harvard student or not. If you are, leave your comments below. What did you experience? Or if you've been following something like this on social media or something like that, bring your insights and how you feel about it and your discussion and what's going on. Love to hear from you guys, okay? Love to hear from you guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, with that being said, join me for the next segment because the next segment I am going to be talking about immigration and the citizenship debate, right? So we're talking about should babies that are born in the United States of America stay in America and the parents be able to stay in America? Or is there something else going on, maybe from a different angle in how we're not looking at it because we're so emotional about it all? Okay. So join me for the next segment and you guys stay tuned, stay inspired, stay informed here at TCLN. Ah, you made it to the end. Blessings, blessings, blessings. I am so glad that you stayed to the end. Also, I hope with all of my heart that you were able to be inspired and you were informed, that you found something out of today's broadcast that resonated with you and that you can take within your life and within your journey. With that being said, do not forget to support at my GoFundMe. Also, check out my bookstore at Preeminent Good Books Publishing. In demand leadership is a concept that I came up with because, after all, I don't care where you are in this world, what you do. The aim is to make sure we're getting better, brighter, and bolder. We do that through lifting one another out of systemic, social, and spiritual issues that affect us daily. Thank you so much. And as my favorite childhood reporter would say, courage, my friends, courage. Until next time, bye, you guys.